Imagine waking up um, every single day for 7 years next to the person you love most in the world while actively hiding the fact that their past betrayal is just like slowly destroying you from the inside out.
Wow. Yeah, that is heavy.
Right. Like you're pouring coffee, you're packing school lunches, you're kissing them goodbye, all while carrying this burning, silent resentment that you just absolutely refuse to let go of.
And I mean, imagine being the partner on the other side of that kitchen island, completely unaware of all that resentment,
Exactly.
just kind of believing that a medical diagnosis and, the simple passage of time had successfully cured a wound. But actually, it was just quietly festering right beneath the floorboards.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're getting into today on the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're unpacking a source that drops us right into the middle of this exact wild scenario.
And it's a really unique source, too.
It is. It's not like a peer-reviewed study or some clinical white paper. It is an anonymous, intensely personal confession that was posted on a blog by a woman who is just desperately seeking help for a marriage that is fundamentally fractured.
Yeah, she is clearly at the end of her rope here.
She really is. So our mission today for this deep dive is to basically tear down the walls of this relationship and look at the actual anatomy of a marital crisis. We're going to explore the neurobiology of mental health, the heavy toll of lingering betrayal, and honestly, the sheer devastating danger of just relying on the calendar to do the work of actual communication.
Because what is truly fascinating here is how a relationship can appear completely, flawlessly functional on the outside.
Oh, total.
We're basically looking at a facade of domestic bliss that completely obscures this foundation built on unresolved grief. And, profound cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. And before we dive into the timeline, I just want to set a really clear boundary for you listening right now. We are entirely reliant on this woman's words from her blog post.
Right. That's so important to remember.
Yeah, it means we are looking at this entire decade-long saga completely through her specific subjective lens. Like, we do not have the husband's perspective at all.
No, not at all.
We don't have clinical notes. We just have her narrative, her perceptions, and, most importantly, her blind spots.
And that is such a crucial lens to establish right off the bat, because in any deeply emotional narrative, the omissions are often just as telling as the inclusions.
Oh, that's such a good point.
We kind of have to read between the lines of her confession, applying established psychological frameworks to actually understand the underlying systemic failures of their partnership.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start chronologically because to understand how a building collapses, you have to look at how the foundation was poured, right?
Exactly. You have to go back to the beginning.
So this one starts with what sounds like a classic Hollywood meet cute. She meets the man who will become her husband when he comes into the office where she works to get his taxes done.
It's a very mundane setting for a totally life-altering collision.
Right, a tax office.
Yeah.
But for her, she says it was literally love at first sight. Like she remembers his hair, his clothes, but mostly she remembers the way he carried himself.
The whole vibe.
Yeah. She specifically uses the words confidence and power to describe him. She admits she initially thought he might be arrogant, but then they talk, she realizes he's a great guy, and boom, they're married 2 years later.
Well, let's pause on the specific traits she is immediately drawn to there, confidence and power.
Yeah. Why do those stand out to you?
Well, from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, she is attracted to his established presence and resource capacity. He is a man whose company is growing, who is clearly successful.
So it's not just like romantic butterflies.
Right. It isn't just about butterflies. It is about perceived security. And that initial attraction really sets the stage for a power dynamic that will ultimately define the structural integrity and eventually the structural failure of their entire marriage.
Wow. Okay. And that dynamic becomes incredibly apparent when we look at their financial setup right after they get married, because he buys their house.
Yep.
He buys her a car. He completely manages the finances.
He takes over everything.
He really does. Now, she actually has a good job at this point, but she specifically notes that the only things she pays for are her phone bill and her subscriptions.
Which is wild.
Yeah. The rest of her income is, in her exact words, play money. And her conclusion of this whole era is, quote, life was all that I had hoped for.
Which, sounds idyllic on paper.
Sure, it sounds great.
It sounds like a fairy tale where all the practical burdens have just been lifted from her shoulders. But if we analyze the psychology of that arrangement, he has essentially become the sole load-bearing pillar of the relationship's infrastructure.
I have to push back a little on her framing of this perfect life, though.
Go for it.
Because Is this a true partnership? Or is this a gilded cage? Like, think about it like living in a luxury high-rise where someone else holds the only set of keys.
Oh, that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, like, yes, the view is spectacular, the amenities are incredible, and you never have to worry about maintenance. But your autonomy is inherently tied to the person holding the lease. You're essentially just a guest in your own life.
That luxury high-rise analogy is perfectly apt. By establishing him as the ultimate provider and financial manager, while relegating her income to just plain money, they've inadvertently infantilized her role in the practical survival of the household.
Right. She's not an equal player.
Exactly. Her contribution is completely optional. His is mandatory. While that might feel like being campered during times of peace, it means that any disruption to the status quo is going to be incredibly destabilizing.
Because she has no safety net of her own.
Precisely. She hasn't developed the relational or financial muscles to be a co-pilot. She is fundamentally a passenger.
And man, the turbulence hit hard. Because the catalyst for this entire decade of pain starts with a layoff. The company she works for downsizes, and she loses her job.
Which is always tough.
It is. Initially, she's kind of bummed but optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
But then comes the real grind. 25-plus interviews, no callbacks, no second rounds, and she begins to just spiral into severe depression.
We really have to look at the neuroscience of what is happening to her brain during this period.
Mhm.
Because when a human being experiences repeated social or professional rejection, the brain doesn't just process it as a bummer.
It's physical, isn't it?
Yes. Functional MRI studies show that social rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the exact same part of the brain that lights up when we experience physical pain.
Wow.
The psychological impact of repeated, quantified rejection, which is exactly what a string of 25 failed job interviews is
Right.
devastating.
It's like getting punched 25 times.
Literally, it isn't just about losing a paycheck. It is a systematic dismantling of her professional identity and her basic self-worth.
Exactly. Her ego is just taking a physical beating. So she's drowning, right? And the husband steps in. He is, according to her, supportive and doting. He tells her she doesn't need to work. He says he will take care of her, just like he always has. And then he suggests that maybe, since she's not working anyway, they should consider starting a family.
Oh, boy.
Right. Now, you would think he's offering a safety net.
Yeah.
But her reaction, she is deeply angered. She doesn't want kids yet. She wants her traveling. She wants her lifestyle. She holds the anger in, but she is furious.
And this right here is where the foundation really starts to crack. He offered a traditional domestic solution to an acute crisis of identity. This is a classic, tragic miscommunication of needs.
Wait, okay, I have to jump in and play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Are we being too harsh on the husband? I mean, the guy is watching his wife drown in depression. He's the sole breadwinner. He's used to solving problems. He steps up and says, I've got this. You don't have to stress about money. Let's focus on building our family.
That's a fair point.
Isn't that just human nature? Isn't it a deeply loving gesture to try and remove the logistical stressor? Why are we framing this as an empathetic miss?
Well, it is absolutely a loving gesture from a logistical standpoint, and his intentions were very likely pure, but psychologically he is treating an identity crisis as a financial crisis.
Ah, I see.
If we look at this through the lens of Dr. John Gottman's research on relationships, partners are constantly making what he calls bids for connection and understanding.
Right, bids.
She is making a bid that essentially says, I feel worthless because the professional world is rejecting me. And he misses that underlying emotion completely and just responds to the surface logic. He says, you don't need the professional world because I provide for you.
So he accidentally invalidates her pain by trying to fix it.
Precisely. His solution inadvertently made her feel completely unseen. By telling her she didn't actually need to work, he completely minimized the emotional devastation of her professional rejection.
Yeah, it was just a hobby anyway.
Exactly. He accidentally reinforced the idea that her career was always just play money. And by suggesting a baby, he was trying to hand her a completely new identity as a mother when she was still actively mourning the loss of her identity as a professional.
Yeah, that's rough.
He was trying to catch her, but he basically caught her by the neck.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense when you frame it like that. And because she holds that anger in, the spiral accelerates rapidly. She starts sleeping until noon or 1 o'clock every single day. She pushes him away. She becomes super distant.
Total withdrawal.
Yeah. She even fantasizes about just waking up, taking nothing, and walking out the door.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't walk out the door. Instead, She starts a secret rebellion.
Here we go.
She gets a separate phone, and she starts talking to 3 different random guys all at once. Guys she literally just handed her number to. She said she was, quote, convinced her marriage was over.
And this is a textbook destructive coping mechanism. It's deeply rooted in the concept of locus of control.
Locus of control.
Yes. She feels utterly powerless in her primary life right now. She has lost her job, she is entirely financially dependent on her husband, and she feels completely misunderstood by him. Her internal locus of control, which is the belief that she can influence her own life, is at absolute zero.
She feels like she has no say in anything.
Right. So what does she do? She seeks out an arena where she has absolute control and desirability.
The secret phone?
Yes. The secret phone isn't really about those 3 random men. It's about establishing a parallel universe where she isn't a rejected job applicant or a dependent, misunderstood wife.
It's an escape hatch.
Exactly. She is basically self-medicating her profound depression and powerlessness with the adrenaline and validation of illicit attention.
But the husband, who is completely unaware of the secret phone or the other men, just sees his wife completely incapacitated by depression for 6 solid months.
He's just seeing the symptoms.
Right. He's still going to work, still paying all the bills, and finally, he suggests she see a psychiatrist. And I just have to pause here to point out the incredible resilience and, honestly, the pure structural integrity of the husband in this phase.
He really holds it together.
He does. He doesn't know she's emotionally cheating. He just sees the woman he loves unable to get out of bed until the afternoon, and instead of walking away from a partner who has completely checked out, he gently guides her toward medical help.
He acts as the anchor that she initially fell in love with. He leverages that power she admired to get her into a clinical setting. And that intervention changes everything because the psychiatrist diagnoses her with bipolar depression.
Okay, let's stop and really look at this diagnosis because this is where the story shifts drastically. How does a bipolar depression actually explain what was happening with the secret phone and the 3 random men?
Well, when we talk about bipolar depression, specifically the hypomanic or manic phases that can trigger risky behavior, we have to look at the brain's reward center.
The dopamine stuff.
Right, the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. Normally, your prefrontal cortex acts as the brakes. It evaluates long-term consequences and says, hey, handing your phone number to 3 random men while you are married is a terrible, highly destructive idea.
Right, it's the voice of reason.
Exactly. But during a hypomanic or manic episode, dopamine transmission becomes highly dysregulated. The brain is just flooded with reward-seeking signals, the desire for novelty, for validation, for adrenaline. It becomes deafening. And the prefrontal brakes essentially fail.
They just go offline.
They go offline. The executive function is temporarily overridden by the impulse to seek immediate gratification. And this very often manifests as hypersexuality, overspending, or sudden risky life changes.
So it's not just a moral failing or like a simple bad choice.
Yeah.
It's a structural chemical hijacking of the brain's risk assessment software.
Exactly. And getting this diagnosis, along with the appropriate medication, stabilizes that neurochemistry.
Which is huge.
It is huge. She starts seeing a therapist. She gets a new job, which, she notes isn't as good as her old one, but she enjoys it. She starts journaling daily. And, crucially, the risky behavior with the other men stops completely. The secret phone just goes into a box in the closet.
And suddenly she writes, things seem to be back to the way they were, and we were both happy. It sounds like a massive success story for modern psychiatry, honestly.
It really does. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see the severe double-edged sword of this medical diagnosis.
Ah, I hear a but coming.
You do, because on one hand, it is miraculous. It saved her life and provided a framework to understand her sudden destructive impulses.
Right.
But it gave them a very dangerous false sense that the core relational problems were entirely solved.
How so?
Well, when you pathologize a behavior, when you say the bipolar depression caused the risky behavior, it is very easy to just separate the behavior from the marriage. It allows her to say, that wasn't me, that was the illness.
Which is technically true.
Which is neurologically true in terms of impulse control, yes. But relationally, it is a massive trap.
Wait, why is it a trap? If the illness caused it, and the illness is treated, isn't the problem fixed?
Because the illness didn't create the underlying resentment about her job loss. The illness didn't create the power imbalance where her income was just play money. The bipolar depression was the lighter fluid, but the marital disconnect was the charcoal.
Wow, okay, yeah.
The diagnosis allowed her to quietly pack away that secret phone without ever dismantling the marital resentments and communication failures that acted as the fertile soil for that illness to manifest so destructively in the first place.
She basically packed away an unexploded bomb in a box of old stuff. You can't just put a bomb in a cardboard box and assume it's been diffused just because it hasn't gone off yet.
That's exactly it. And the tragic irony is that she didn't throw the phone away, she kept it.
Which is crazy.
She admits in the post she doesn't even know why she kept it. Psychologically, keeping the physical evidence of a secret life often points to an unconscious refusal to fully let go of that escape hatch.
Or maybe she wanted to be caught.
Very likely. An unconscious desire to eventually be caught and forced to deal with the reality of what happened, because keeping the secret is taking a tremendous psychic toll on her.
Well, the universe certainly obliged her unconscious desire, because a year after she gets healthy, her husband is going through a box of old stuff, and he finds the phone.
The bomb goes off.
The bomb goes off. He turns it on. He reads all the messages. He reads her talking to 3 other men while he was literally carrying the entire weight of their survival, paying the mortgage, paying her bills, begging her to get out of bed.
It's devastating.
She says she had never seen him cry until that day. He tells her he is crying for the loss of their marriage because he isn't sure he can move past it.
We really have to understand the magnitude of what is happening to his brain in this specific moment. This is a profound psychological concept known as betrayal trauma. It's been deeply researched by psychologist Jennifer Freyd.
Betrayal trauma.
Yes. Betrayal trauma occurs when the people or institutions on which a person depends for survival significantly violate that person's trust.
But wait, he wasn't dependent on her for survival.
Yeah.
Right. He was the provider. He was the anchor.
Right. He wasn't financially dependent on her, but he was emotionally and structurally dependent on the reality of their shared life.
Oh.
For a year, he thought he was the hero who helped his wife through a dark medical crisis. Finding that phone didn't just hurt his feelings, it rewrote his entire history of that year.
It shattered his reality.
Completely. He wasn't just a caregiver anymore, he was a victim of deceit. The narrative of his own life, his understanding of reality, was suddenly just pulled out from under him. The brain processes this level of cognitive dissonance as an acute physical threat.
So she explains everything to him. They go to a counselor. And the blog post casually notes that things, quote, seem to be improving.
Seem to be.
And then, in literally one of the most jarring transitions I have ever read in my life, the narrative just fast forwards. 7 years.
Unbelievable.
They have 3 children together. 7 years pass between him finding the phone and the current crisis.
The Band-Aid years.
The Band-Aid years. That's exactly what it is. Let's zero in on that phrase she used, seem to be improving. Think about this like running a high-performance engine with absolutely no oil.
That's not going to end well.
No. You might tape over the check engine light, turn up the radio and say, sounds fine to me, and just happily drive the car for 7 years. But the friction doesn't stop just because you can't hear it over the music. You are actively ignoring the machinery failing beneath the hood, tearing itself to shreds.
It is a profound example of the illusion of moving on. In our culture, we often conflate the cessation of active conflict with the presence of actual healing. We really do. Just because we aren't fighting doesn't mean we're fixed.
Exactly. There is a massive fundamental difference between surviving a marital crisis and actually healing the rupture.
But how do you just ignore something like that for 7 years? 7 years is a long time.
Well, what likely happened here is what we can call the anesthesia of parenting.
Oh, the anesthesia of parenting. I like that.
The immense logistical and emotional demands of having 3 young children provided the perfect, socially acceptable distraction. The trauma of the betrayal was simply buried beneath the exhausting, everyday logistics of survival.
Diapers, school runs.
Right. Pediatric appointments, mortgage payments. They require so much cognitive load that they act as a very effective anesthetic against dealing with deep existential marital pain.
You just go into survival mode. You become co-managers of a household rather than romantic partners doing the incredibly hard, painful work of rebuilding trust.
Precisely.
You're just swapping shifts at a factory instead of being in a marriage. And while they are managing the factory, the Gottman 4 horsemen are slowly moving in. Specifically, stonewalling and contempt.
Yeah.
He is stonewalling his true feelings to keep the peace, and contempt is just quietly fermenting in his subconscious.
Which brings us to the eruption. Present day. The kids are at grandma's. It's date night. And they decide for the very first time to try some cannabis gummies. And they put on a movie.
A seemingly innocuous domestic evening.
Exactly. Until the movie they happen to choose features a storyline where a wife has an affair, the husband immediately turns the movie off, and he absolutely breaks down.
The dam breaks.
It totally breaks. He opens the floodgates. He confesses to her that he has thought about her betrayal every single day for 7 years.
Every single day.
Every day. He tells her that he harbors deep resentment towards her. He admits that the couples therapy they tried didn't help him at all. In fact, he reveals he went to a new therapist on his own recently, and that therapist told him he needed to leave her.
And how did he respond to that clinical advice?
He fired the therapist. He completely refused to leave. He told his wife he loves her with so much of himself, and he has devoted so much of his life into us, that he physically cannot picture his life without her in it.
Here's where the neurobiology of the gummies becomes incredibly relevant.
Yes, the gummies acted as an absolute truth serum. But, how does that actually work? Why did a little bit of THC completely break a man who had held it together for 7 years?
Well, THC interacts with the brain's cannabinoid receptors, which can significantly alter the function of the default mode network, or DMN, and downregulate the prefrontal cortex, which, as we discussed earlier, is the brain's filter and control center.
The brakes.
The brakes. For 7 years, this husband has been expending an unfathomable amount of cognitive energy building and maintaining a dam to hold back an ocean of resentment.
And suppressing it.
Yes. He had to employ massive executive control to be the strong dad, the loving husband, the reliable provider.
So the gummies just shut off the power to the dam.
Exactly. The lowered inhibitions stripped away his ability to compartmentalize. The movie triggered his amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, and because the prefrontal cortex was suppressed by the THC, it couldn't tell the amygdala to quiet down.
It couldn't filter the reaction.
Right. The raw, unfiltered reality of his pain just flooded the system.
And what he reveals in that flood is deeply disturbing. He is hopelessly trapped.
He is. He is trapped in a profound cognitive trap called the sunk cost fallacy, totally entangled with a very real, very deep love.
Sunk cost fallacy. Explain that.
In behavioral economics, the sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias where you continue a behavior or endeavor as a result of previously invested resources, like time, money, or emotional labor. This bias is driven by loss aversion.
Okay, loss aversion.
Human beings are hardwired to feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as intensely as the joy of gaining something of equal value.
And he literally used the language of investment. He says he has devoted so much of himself into us.
Exactly. He cannot leave, because leaving means his brain has to process the investment of his entire adult life as a total loss.
He'd lose his whole identity.
Yes, his identity as a successful provider and father would be shattered. But he cannot forgive because the original wound of betrayal was never actually cleaned out. It was just stitched up with dirt still inside it.
Think about the psychological weight of what you just described.
Yeah.
I want you, the listener, to really imagine this. Carrying a daily burning resentment. Waking up every single day for over 2,500 days and remembering that your partner betrayed you, while simultaneously acting out the role of the cheerful, loving father and husband at the breakfast table.
It's unbearable.
It is quite literally psychological torture.
It is. And firing the therapist who told him to leave is incredibly revealing about his mental state right now.
How so?
He wasn't looking for a therapist to help him process his trauma. He was looking for a therapist to give him the tools to endure his self-imposed prison more comfortably.
Oh, wow.
When the therapist pointed out the open door, he fired her, because the open door is far more terrifying to him than the cell.
Which brings us to the wife's reaction in the present day and the desperate, frantic measures she reveals she's been taking. She writes in her post that she has spent the last 7 years secretly trying to, quote, make it up to him.
Right.
She has no passcode on her phone. She shares her live GPS location with him constantly. She updates him on her every move when they aren't together, all completely unprompted. He never asked her to do any of this.
She is essentially trying to solve an emotional deficit with surveillance data.
Yes. She thinks data equals trust. And the devastating irony is that the husband straight up tells her, it isn't even about trust. He admits he actually does trust her currently. He knows she isn't cheating on him now.
Because the problem isn't about what she's doing today. The problem is what she did 7 years ago, and the fact that his grief over that event was never witnessed, validated, or resolved. Her giving him her location data is a transactional offering and saying, look, my ledger is clean right now. I am being good. But his pain isn't a math problem.
Like, have you ever tried to apologize for something without actually understanding why the other person is really mad? You know it never works. You just end up frustrating them more because your apology is missing the target entirely.
That's exactly what is happening here on a macro scale.
So out of sheer desperation, she turns to the internet. She says she can't talk to her friends or family because nobody knows what happened, and she has spent 7 years curating the image of the perfect family.
That luxury high-rise again.
Exactly. So she goes down these online rabbit holes looking for a fix. And what is the single conclusion she comes to? The only solution she can think of. She decides she needs to find him someone else to talk to.
It's so
A form of, quote, revenge or getting even. She wants to give him a hall pass to talk to other women. Even though she explicitly notes he is a homebody, doesn't use dating apps, doesn't go to bars, and has zero interest in other women.
This raises an incredibly important question about how isolation breeds profoundly distorted thinking.
I am sorry, but I have to push back so hard on her proposed solution here. Trying to heal his deep existential emotional devastation by offering him a hall pass is like trying to put out a house fire by throwing a calculator at it.
It doesn't make any sense.
It fundamentally, entirely misunderstands the nature of the problem. It's an absurd, almost comical miscalculation of human emotion.
Well, it is absurd from the outside, definitely. But it makes complete logical sense within the distorted vacuum she is currently living in.
Wow.
Because she has isolated herself. Because she refuses to tell her friends or family, maintaining that facade to the outside world, she is trapped in an echo chamber of her own guilt. She is treating the marriage like a literal accounting ledger that needs balancing.
Ah, I see.
In her mind, it's like, I had secret conversations, so to balance the equation, he must have secret conversations.
So she is trying to solve an emotional systemic failure with a purely transactional, illogical fix.
Precisely. She is treating the marriage like a spreadsheet rather than a living organism that has a deep, infected wound. And it completely ignores who he actually is.
Right, he's a homebody.
As we discussed, he is a man who values stability, loyalty, and his role as the anchor to such a rigid degree that he would endure 7 years of silent agony rather than break his family apart.
The idea that he would want to go chat up random women as revenge completely strips him of his actual character. It's projecting her past coping mechanisms onto him.
Exactly. When she felt powerless, she sought outside validation from other men. So she assumes that to give him power back, she must offer him outside validation from other women.
But that's not his source of power.
Right. His power, historically in their relationship, came from being the provider, the anchor, the moral center. Her betrayal shattered his perception of his own anchor-like stability. A hall pass doesn't restore his stability, it just degrades the marriage further.
Wow. So what does this all mean? We are looking at a deeply tragic scenario where two people clearly love each other. I mean, they are absolutely desperate to stay together, but they are utilizing totally incompatible coping mechanisms.
They're speaking different languages.
Totally. He is stonewalling and suffering from the sunk cost fallacy, and she is offering surveillance data and absurd transactional fixes.
The ultimate lesson here is really about the mechanics of time and trauma. The passage of time is passive. Healing is active.
That's a great way to put it.
You cannot rely on the calendar to do the heavy lifting of communication, neurobiological regulation, and structural relational repair. They basically spent 7 years playing house on top of a sinkhole.
Which brings it right back to you listening to this. If you've ever found yourself apologizing for something you didn't do just to keep the peace, or if you've ever swallowed your anger because it wasn't a convenient time to bring it up, you are tasting a fraction of what this couple is doing for 7 years.
It's a very common trap.
It is. It forces a really uncomfortable reflection. Like, what are you sweeping under the rug in your own life? Are you relying on the simple passage of time to fix a rift with a partner, a friend, or a family member? Are you mistaking the absence of screaming matches for the presence of actual peace?
And that leads to a rather provocative, lingering thought to close on. We culturally champion the idea of unconditional love, right? Of staying together through thick and thin, of honoring the vows no matter what.
Right, the whole till death do us part.
Exactly. But in cases of profound, unhealed trauma, Can absolute devotion, the rigid, unyielding refusal to leave someone no matter how deep the daily pain is, can that actually become the very prison that prevents both people from truly healing?
Wow.
Sometimes the most destructive thing you can do to a person you love is refuse to let them go.
It's a terrifying question because we want the easy fix. We want the medical diagnosis to be the end of the story. We want the ledger to balance. But when it comes to the human heart, the complexity of the brain, and the fallout of betrayal, we have to be brave enough to look at the machinery. You can't just tape over the check engine light. Eventually, you have to look under the hood